Welcome to the Simple Sophisticate podcast, where intelligent living is paired with signature style. I'm your host, Shannon Ables. And whether you're listening on your commute, exercising, working in the garden, or sitting down with a hot cup of tea or a café au lait, thank you for tuning in. Let's get started. Welcome to the 167th episode of the Simple Sophisticate. And today we're kicking off French Week, our annual tradition. And this year we have multiple episodes of the podcast all around the theme of France. And this is our first one of the week. I have an author and blogger who is living in France who's joining me today. Her new book is dropping today, right now, August 7th, and it is a memoir of taking a rundown barn and making it her dream home. I think you'll enjoy our conversation. Janine Marsh takes us through her everydays. She talks about how she decided to make the decision to move from London to France, and she will walk us through one day of her life, waking up in the morning, greeting her animals, heading to the market, as well as reassuring all of us that traveling alone is a very good idea. She'll give us her tips and tricks as she does this kind of travel all the time throughout France. I hope you enjoy this interview. I know I enjoyed having her on, and let's escape to France, shall we? Here is my interview with Janine Marsh. My guest today is an English expat making a life in France with her husband in the North Countryside, founder of the French-focused blog, The Good Life in France. It all began with the purchase of a rundown 11-bedroom farmhouse just over 12 years ago. Now with her first book being released this week, titled My Good Life in France, author and blogger Janine Marsh is stopping by the Simple Sophisticate. Thank you for joining me on the podcast today, Janine.
Thank you for having me, Shannon. I'm really pleased to be here.
I'm happy to have you on all the way across the pond over in the North Countryside or the French countryside. I am tickled pink to have you on. The full title of your book is My Good Life in France, In Pursuit of a Rural Dream. And it's a memoir of your journey along with your husband, Mark, of undertaking the significant task of turning an unexpected purchase of real estate into your permanent residence. Now, you've lived in London most of your adult life, but it wasn't until 2004 that this life-changing decision happened. So my question is, what was the catalyst or what prompted you to say yes to this life change?
There was several things. My mum died in 2002 and my dad took to drinking whiskey to get him through the long, lonely nights. He was absolutely bereft without my mum. And I could see that he was drinking too much. And I thought, I'll take him to France on a day trip because living in London, that's easy for us. You just basically drive to the ferry port or the train, and it takes half an hour on the train to get to France. So it's a really easy journey. And I thought, I'll get him onto the wine. It's got to be better for him than whiskey. So it was a cold day. It was a February day. It was raining. The sky was a horrible grey colour. And my dad said, I really don't want to go, but I made him come with me. And we bought some wine. And then he said he'd take me for lunch. And we decided to just drive around for about an hour and see if we could find a nice restaurant. And, I didn't know France very well at the time. And here in France, basically, all the restaurants close at 2 o'clock. They're open from 12 to 2. If you get there after 2 o'clock, get it. And that's what happened to us. We arrived in a town at 5 to 2 and everybody was closing their doors. And it was just one of those fate things where you look in a shop window, and we looked in a real estate window and at the houses because when we were miserable, my dad was really moaning and Mark was moaning. And this estate agent just came to the door and he said, you look really, well, in French, you look very cold and very fed up. Why don't you come and have a cup of coffee? And we went in and had coffee, and he said to me, how much money have you got? And I said, I haven't got any money at all. And he just went on and on. And in the end, just to shut him up, I said, if I had any money, it would be less than €100,000, which at that time was about £65,000, maybe $80,000. And he said, oh, I've got 3 houses. Go and look at them. And
what made you go into this real estate? I mean, was it just to stay warm?
Was it? Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was to stay warm and for the coffee.
I love it. Okay.
There was nowhere open. Everything was shut. It was the only place we could get a cup of coffee. So that was it.
I love it.
So we went and looked at these houses just because we had nothing else to do. And they were absolutely awful, all 3 of them. But the last one I looked at, I don't know, it was just another fate thing. We drove into this tiny village with no shops, no bars. And it was a really horrible day. And at that precise moment when I stopped outside the house, the sun came out and the bells on the church started ringing and there were ducks quacking. And it was such a joyful sound. It was just bizarre. And the house itself was vile, but I just fell in love with it there and then, and I bought it.
Something spoke to you. It's beautiful. Yeah. No, it sounds like a very, I don't want to say serendipitous, but very fortuitous moment that you listened to and you spoke to you at some level, I guess.
It did, yeah. I mean, my dad thought I was absolutely insane. He was walking around. He was saying, God, this is so awful. And he wasn't mincing his words at all. He just said what he thought, because that was my dad. And but for me, I just, I didn't see the rat nests and the holes in the wall and the dirt floors. And it was truly awful. All my friends, when they saw it, said it was a house of horrors. But I just saw something different. I saw what it could be.
You saw through it. Well, and that leads me to my next question. You listed off in the chapter that is titled The Art of Small Steps, which I want to talk about that title. I think there's a lot of lessons that you share with your readers through your experience, but you explain that in total there were 37 windows, 13 doors, and there was, at the end of this project, 100 tons of concrete that would be added or fixed or replaced. This was, like you said, not a small project. So how did you said you saw through it, but how did you motivate yourself to then take those small steps and continue to be motivated? What was it that drove you or guided you?
Once we bought the house, we didn't move out straight away. It was meant to be a holiday home. And for the next few years, the next 5 years, we did the odd weekend there. Mostly it was cutting the grass because it's a big garden, about an acre of land, and it just got out of control very quickly. And but then when we did move out, it was a question of having to. We couldn't afford builders to do all the work. And so we watched YouTube tutorials, as you do.
Yeah.
And my husband's quite big and strong. He's 6'2" and he's an ex-boxer. So he's got lots of energy. And I'm 4'11", and so I'm quite a bit smaller. But I learned to be the gopher. So he was like, go for this, go for that. And so I do the running around and carrying things and mixing, and he does all the really heavy stuff. And basically, because I'd worked in a bank and I was a project manager, I used to do spreadsheets. My husband really hated it. He just wants to do things, and I want to plan things. But it wasn't easy. We had quite a lot of debate, shall we say. But in the end, we learned that actually, knowing where you're going with this, making sure that you lay a floor before you put a window in is a good thing to do. And so we did start with laying concrete floors in the rooms because it was still dirt.
I remember reading that. I was just blown away by how, I don't want to say not rural, how really earthy, not to be punny about it, but how earthy your house was.
So earthy is like the best word for this house. That's such a good word. I'm going to teach that, Shannon.
Go for it. Well, and it sounds like you guys made a really strong team. As you just said, you complemented each other. He had certain strengths, you had other strengths, but this wasn't, it wasn't an easy decision for you to make this a full-time house. And I really enjoyed the chapter, that you titled Decision Time, because I could feel your angst. You had a good job. You loved your job. You were moving up in the ranks, and they offered you a I love the conversation you shared when your boss, he really did not want to let you go. And so he made you an offer you never expected you'd have to say no to. And I'm curious, I mean, making a big leap like that is something a lot of us contemplate, but we don't do it because the unknown it's frightening. How did you get to the point where you said, yep, got to do this. This is what's best. What was it that made that decision for you?
I think it was probably thinking of my mum, who died 6 months into her retirement. And she said to me when she was really ill, just like me, Janine. And I knew what she meant. My mum was really intense about things, and so am I. If I do something, I put everything into it, and I don't do anything by halves, and I can get very obsessive about things. And I was very obsessive about my job, to the point where I wouldn't go home at weekends if there was something to do in the office that needed to be done. And we were working on a massive project for Merrill Lynch at the time, and I just wouldn't go home because I needed to be in the office. I needed to be there, and I realised that I am like that, and I realised that I put other things first. And I think thinking of my mum lying there and saying to me, "You're just like me, Janine," and I thought, I don't want to be like that. I want to change how I am. I want to be someone who does something with their life and takes a risk, not the person who turns the light off in the office. And also, I think, money's great, but love is better. And you can't buy love. And my husband so wanted us to have a chance to do something different with our life. And so I just thought I'd take that leap of faith. And there was a part of me that thought I would probably go back. And at work, all my friends were running a book, like bets on how long it'd be before I came back, because no one thought I'd really do it, not even me.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, that was, it was pretty much my mum, and also a realization that money isn't everything, and there are more important things in life.
Right. I like that phrase that you use, to not be the person who turns off the lights. I think that's an interesting way of looking at it, because if you're doing that, you are giving, because there's only 24 hours in the day, and other things suffer when we do that. And so it's a matter of, balance or priorities. That's interesting. But your friends, wow, whoever bet that you were going to stay, they're doing all right.
I don't think anybody did.
Oh, no, they missed out.
More a question of, will she be back in 3 months or 6 months?
Oh, really?
That was pretty much it.
So all of them lost. I love it. Okay.
Yeah, they did.
Well, I'm curious how you found, or what you found to be something that, how I guess the question is, how have you changed upon now becoming a full-time resident? Are you full-time resident? You're a full-time resident now in France,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
How have you seen yourself change?
God, so many ways. I mean, even small things. When I lived in London, I lived in a very suburban part of London, and I commuted into the city every day. I even went to school in London from the age of 11. I went to London every day on the train.
Oh, wow.
I know, but now I just cross the courtyard and go into the pigsty to work, which is very different. And yeah, seriously.
I love it.
But I never spoke to anybody in those days, and nobody did. We'd all walk to the station in the morning to get the commuter train. And I'd see my neighbour who lived next door for 20 years, and we would avoid eye contact, so we didn't have to talk.
Really?
And seriously, because that's just the way London is. It's city living. People have no space. There are millions of people squashed into a small area, and you value your personal space so much that you sort of go insular in London. Whereas here, everybody speaks to you. The first time I went to a local bar, every single person in there shook hands with me. I was absolutely astonished, and I thought, it must be a special bar, but it happens everywhere here. It's just a way of life. You walk into a bar or a restaurant or a shop, and people will welcome you into the shop. And if you don't say something back, they think there's something wrong with you.
Okay.
So, yeah, seriously. So now I've learned that I have to open up to other people, and that's a very different thing for me. And animals, I've got so many animals now. I never had an animal in my life before, not even a goldfish. And now I'm like a magnet for every stray dog and cat
I
that
know your
going.
book. I love the stories of your animals. They are delightful. They are just, as an animal lover myself, I was glad to see that they brought some, they seemed to make you happy and they brought out your compassion. That's what I was reading in the book. I saw this woman who was very compassionate, and your husband too. He has a huge heart. You guys just have a lovely animal, country estate, it sounds like.
Well, do you know, I didn't know that about my husband at all. We've been married for, I don't know how many years, maybe 6 years before we came out here. And obviously I loved him very much. But when you work, weekends and long days, and we both worked, and we'd see each other in the morning and in the evenings, and we have weekends in France now and again. But I didn't know about him that he loved animals, and obviously he didn't know that about me because mostly I was scared of animals in those days. And it's actually really nice that I've had the opportunity to find out something that I would never have known otherwise about him. Yes, he does love animals. He's worse than me. If he catches a mouse, he takes it into the fields and releases it.
Oh, I love him already.
Seriously, and we found a mole the other day. One of the cats brought a mole home, and it was still alive. So he says we've got to go and release it where the cats can't find it. So we go walking off into the country, and then he lets it go, and it started burying itself in the ground while he's whistling the Great Escape thing.
That is adorable.
I don't know what the neighbours think, honestly.
Oh, that's adorable. Well, speaking of your neighbors, there's a lot of different things in the book. You know, you go with your English mentality and they come with their French mentality. And one of them was the picnic situation. And I thought that was lovely. I'm curious, could you explain to our listeners, first of all, your what the differences are? And I'm curious, are you now more French when you go picnicking, or have you stuck to your English ways?
I would say I was more French, but I'm not sure my neighbours would agree. But they like the English. You know, it's the same for us. You in America, you love a French market type thing, but they love American things. I mean, they're crazy for NCIS over here. Seriously, it's they love Abby. God, they're mad for Abby over here. And so I guess in a way they love Englishness as well, in the way that we love Frenchness. But with the picnic, it was, my neighbour said, oh, we're going to have a picnic and we're going to have an international fishing competition with the Brits and the Belgian neighbours and the British and the French neighbours. So over here, I mean, you know, my idea of a picnic is pilchards. I don't know if you know what pilchards are. It's tinned fish.
Okay, thank you.
Corned beef sandwiches, and we call them doorstep sandwiches, which is when you take a loaf of bread and you cut the thick bread slice and you butter it and put a wedge of corned beef in it. Okay. Maybe pickle. We're crazy for pickle in England.
Oh, okay.
And that's pretty much it. So that's what I did, all wrapped up in silver foil, which is normal. And then when we got there, all these French people were laying out tarts with cheese, tarte aux herbes and tarte maroilles and
oh my God,
all these chicken cooked with herbes de Provence and it was just amazing. And I was so ashamed when I got out my huge sandwiches with corned beef. And I thought, oh God, they're going to just so take the mickey out of me over this. I'm just going to be like the pathetic British woman who can't cook and fulfill all their dreams that we can't cook in Britain. And then they all went crazy for them. And my neighbour Remy was like, oh my God, it's bully beef. We love the bully beef. And everyone swapped with me, which was great because I got lovely French gastronomy and they got corned beef sandwiches. Yeah. So if I do a picnic now, I actually go to the shop and I buy a tart. I'm very bad.
Oh no! Well, I was going to say that would be nice. It's right there. I mean, they make their beautiful patisseries and pastries, and understandable. They sound very welcoming. The community that you moved into, and you're close to Calais, is that right? In the country?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And they just seem very welcoming. And your Jean-Claude, your neighbor Jean-Claude, very helpful. And is that the case that you found them to be very welcoming?
Absolutely. I mean, Jean-Claude is, he's definitely a one-off. They call him Monsieur Partout here, which means Mr. Everywhere, because he's seemingly on every corner. popping up, saying hello and helping you out. But for me, he's been a great mentor. Him and his wife, they've been absolutely superb. And he's a great gardener. And one of our goals was to be self-sufficient. So he's taught me gardening. Although he is a bit keen on gardening by the moon, which I haven't quite got the grip of yet. And I know. And Saints' days as well. Like you can only put your potatoes in on St. Pierre's Day and things like this. So yeah, which is a bit bizarre.
Yeah.
But he's been a great mentor.
Oh, it's wonderful.
The neighbours are lovely. Very nice people here.
I was going to say, having good neighbors is a priceless thing to have. Oh, that's wonderful. I'm glad that you have them. I know that there were many challenges as you restored your home. And maybe this question is not even going to be about the house, but what was one of the most challenging obstacles you overcame throughout this journey? And what was the lesson you learned from that?
Oh, this sounds really terrible, but one of the hardest things was being with somebody 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
That's right, because your husband and you worked... during the week you would work apart because of your jobs and your hours, and then just be together on the weekends in the first part of your relationship, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and when we first came out, that was now it's not such a problem. We've got used to giving each other space, and also I travel a lot, so that helps. But at first, and that first winter when it was so cold, we arrived here on a sunny day, and that was our first challenge as well, was the septic tank. I don't know if you know what a septic tank is, but we don't have mains drains. Yeah. So that exploded in the garden the first day, so that was quite a challenge. But when we arrived, it was sunny, and then quite quickly it got cold, and it dropped to -20, and we had very little heating. And I for the first 6 months, I hated him, making him come out here. Quite a lot of the time I hated him making me come out here. And I was so cold that we would sit in the house, and if you could see your breath freezing in front of you, even though the fire was on. And I'd go to bed and wake up, and the sheets were frozen, and if you left a glass of water on the side, it would freeze on top. That was a really tough challenge, and I honestly didn't think I was going to make it again after that. But we focused. That's when we got the spreadsheets out and we said, right, we have to be ready for next winter and get a fire in. And then there was another challenge, getting an artisan to fit a fire. In the end, we just learned to do absolutely everything ourselves.
That's amazing. So small steps again, setting those little, what can we do now? What can we, that's your spreadsheet. That's a good idea. Okay. No, yeah, I was reading those chapters and I felt for you, because good job for hanging in there. I don't know if most people would have, but it worked out very well. I'm curious, what is one of your favorite places in your home or on your property?
I love all of my home, but I'm sitting in the pigsty talking to you, and I love my little pigsty. When we came here, it was just 3 walls and half a roof, and Mark built it. When we decided that we were definitely going to go with the website and I was going to be blogging and this was serious, he built me this little office, and it's tiny, and I've got my computers and all my books in here, and it's just lovely. So I think he built it with love, so I do love this room so much.
So that would make it all the more special.
Yeah.
And I have to ask, so it was originally a pigsty, that's why you're calling it I mean, it's so unique. Understandably, this is a special place for you for all those reasons and just the journey you've been on. Oh, interesting. Thank you for sharing that. So your home office, I love it. And you mentioned your blog, and I want to talk about that. So you began The Good Life France in 2011. It has grown tremendously. It is full of things to do and see in France, but also cultural insights and information about the different regions. I love this part. Basically, it's a Francophile must visit. If someone has not yet visited your blog, and I have a ton of Francophile listeners right now, where would you recommend they start or begin exploring first?
Just go on the homepage and pick a category that you fancy. There are recipes from top chefs, both in France and the UK and America. There are stories, short stories. There's the blog of my life. There's places to go in every region in France. There are accounts of all the trips that I do, and I'm very lucky I get to see France, on a regular basis. I travel everywhere by train, because I figure a lot of people, when they come here, don't want to drive and they want to know how to get places. So I want to make it easy for people to find the places that I find. So, but there's 3,000 pages. So look at the homepage, look at the categories, and pick one and enjoy it. That's what I'd say.
I thoroughly enjoy it, and I'm currently planning a trip for next summer, and I'm using it as one of my resources. So it is a rich resource for travelers. So you'll choose a destination to go on or go to, and that is something you're doing for your blog research, and then you come back, write about it, images, talk the future tourists through how to navigate. Is that part of why you travel, or are you traveling to interview people, or what prompts you to travel?
France is huge. It's such an enormous, to me it is. I mean, it's the size of Texas, so to you it probably seems quite small, but it's 4 times the size of the UK. So to me it seems huge, but it's also so diverse. From the north where we're on the English Channel, and it's quite a cool place. And then down in the south, we've got the Mediterranean, and then we've got the mountains, and we've got beaches and countryside, and then you have Alsace, which is on the border with Germany. It's so diverse that I just decided that I was going to try and visit everywhere I can in France as often as I can. So in the last 6 weeks, I've been to Provence, I've been to Avignon and Orange, and I've also been to Montpellier and Carcassonne, which is stunning. And I'm off to Kaiserberg and Ile-sur-la-Ré, which is in the Britain, just off the coast of La Rochelle. And basically, Paris as well. I absolutely love Paris to bits. I'm going to live there one day, I think.
Oh, okay.
And yep, that'll be my next book, I'm sure. And but there's just so much to see here. So I'm really lucky that the trains are brilliant, and I can just jump on the train from my local station and just go wherever I want. So I do.
That's
wonderful. And I do interview people as well, because I do a bit of freelance. So
okay,
that's always fun.
Well, and since you mentioned it, I'm going to ask the question. So are you traveling by yourself most of the time?
So I travel on my own. Yeah, because I've got animals, so Mark looks after the animals. We very rarely get away together unless we have 5 children between us, and we could blackmail one of our children to look after the animals. And which I'm totally up for that, whatever. But mostly I'm on my own. Sometimes I'll go with some other bloggers or journalists, but I have no fear of traveling on my own.
Well, and I think I love talking to people who are similar to myself in that regard. I travel a lot by myself as well. And I like to, I mean, it's a wonderful thing to do. There's so many amazing experiences you can have. I'm curious, what are some tips or ways that you travel that you think would maybe help somebody who's considering traveling, especially in a foreign country? I know you live there now, but this is unknown to them. I know a lot of people want to travel to France, but maybe traveling by themselves isn't something they think they can do. I completely disagree. I think they can. I think they should. What would you say to someone who is considering that?
Get a good app on your mobile phone or a map. I hate it when I get lost. I really hate when I arrive in a place and I've got to find my B&B, and it might be 9 o'clock at night, and I don't know where it is. So I have a really good app on my mobile phone that will show me the steps and tell me I'm going in the right direction. It tells me exactly where to turn the corner, how long it will take me to get there. And for me, that's an invaluable thing to have, because it gives you the security and comfort of knowing how far you've got to go. And if you go too far, you've gone a bit wrong and you have to turn around and keep going, which I used to do. I'm not very technical, so a mobile phone for me is quite a new thing. I love it. We get no mobile signal in our village, so I don't use them that often. But for me, that's essential. Know where you're going.
Okay.
A little bit of French helps as well. Being able to pronounce the place you're looking for. So if you get lost, you can ask.
Okay. Sure.
But I'd say just go for it.
I think so too.
The first time I did a trip on my own, I had no idea where I was going or what I was doing, but I find people are really kind. I have no problem asking someone if I'm lost. In Paris, I ask all the time. I never go to Paris without getting lost on the metro. Every single time, doesn't matter how many times I go from Gare du Nord to Montparnasse, I will get lost. So I've had people take me by the hand and actually lead me to the platform.
That's wonderful.
I think if you smile when you ask and you are able to say in French, I'm lost, please help me. Okay. People are so kind, even in Paris, which has a bad rap, but it's really not that bad.
It's very friendly. That's what I've found too. Yeah. So just know that statement in French, I'm lost. I'll put that on the show notes just so we have that for sure. Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing those. Because I think if nothing else, just hearing from someone who does it regularly, as a comfort, because it is so possible. And as you said, France is such a diverse country. There's so much more than just Paris. Even though Paris is amazing, it's important to feel comfortable getting on those trains because the trains are just amazing. And you obviously have much more experience doing that than I, but my experience has been the same. So thank you for sharing that. Walk us through a daily routine with regards to your writing, your blogging, you're just living in the country with your animals. What would be a typical day for you? What would that look like?
A typical day is I get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm quite an early riser. And first thing is, at the moment, I've got 3 ducklings living in the house. I found them. One of them had bad legs, so I had to give him swimming lessons to strengthen his legs. So seriously, I don't know what people would think if they saw me in my bathroom with a duckling in the sink saying, come on, Rocky, you can do it. You're a survivor. But and he did. He's okay now. He's in with the other 2 ducklings I found. So that's what my day starts with, cuddling 3 little ducklings and feeding them and changing them. Then I go down and feed the chickens and ducks and geese that I keep at the bottom of the garden.
Okay.
Then I have 6 cats that I feed. Then I walk 3 dogs, come back, and then start writing, basically. I really like writing in the morning, and I love in the winter when I come out, it's about 7:30, and I start in the pigsty, and the owls are hooting still in the woods. And in the summer, the birds are tweeting because the sun's coming up. It's just such a lovely experience for me. I'm still not used to rural life because I'm a Londoner, but I absolutely love that. And then basically I'll write. Sometimes I'll go to the market. Like today I went to the market and I had to get a light bulb, but then I ended up walking through and a man persuaded me to try some cheese. And it was absolutely amazing cheese. And then he showed me a picture of his mum who lives in Corsica and she made this cheese. And then I ended up buying a whole wedge of cheese, which was very expensive, but absolutely delicious. And then someone offered me a plum, so I ended up buying plums, and you just walk through the market, eating your way through the market back to the car, basically. So, and then back to work, and then in a minute I will go and do the ducklings and start again, all over again with the birds, and then that would be it for my day. So it's quite nice, it's quite fun.
Sounds lovely. It sounds like a dream, Janine. I think many people are probably in awe right now. My mouth's kind of agape and...
Well, I tell you, if I could share this Corsican cheese with you, I would love to because, oh God, it's so dreamy.
And it comes with a story. I think that's what's so lovely about the markets is you get to meet the maker of these products and these goods and you hear the stories behind them. I think that's what makes it even more worth going and exploring and tasting something you may have never tasted before if you weren't with a person and a face sharing it with you.
It's true. That they say here, the people that make wine, they say wine tastes better when you know the story behind it or when you're drinking it with someone really special. And I think that's true.
I absolutely agree with that. Yeah. All right. The final question is, and I often share every episode, I share a Petite plaisir at the end of our podcast episodes, but I would like you to share this week's Petite plaisir. So what is a favorite, simple, everyday pleasure you enjoy?
Well, I have lots. I'm quite easy to please, I have to say. But I think for me, it's the end of the evening when I go in the house and the dogs come in. And if it's a cold day, I've got a wood fire and they'll lay on their beds in front of the wood fire. And then the cats come in, and usually I've got at least one cat on my lap. Sometimes there are 3 or 4 of them, all fighting for space on my lap. And they'll be purring, and the dogs are happy, and And I have a pot of tea. That's my treat to myself in the evening. A pot of tea with Earl Grey from Daman Freres in Paris, which is only about 2 hours away from me by train. And then I love to watch House. I'm watching it. I've become on series 2 for the third time. But I do absolutely love House, and I just sit there, and it's just an hour of escapism. The animals are happy. It's the end of the night. House is funny, and I feel so content with that experience. I really do.
It sounds like a lovely hour of savoring the life you've created. Yeah, what a wonderful gift you've given yourself and your husband and your animals. That's all together.
I have to say, I do realise how absolutely lucky I am. I pinch myself sometimes. Seriously, I do.
Oh,
not very hard. I don't do pain, but I do pinch myself sometimes.
Well, you've worked for it, and you know what I mean? I think there's something to that when you know what kind of work and effort has gone into that. There's so much, you savor it even more. So, the fruit of your labor, so to speak. Janine, thank you.
When you come to France, let me know where you're going, and I'll give you loads of tips for my
I will. I will absolutely reach out to you. It'll be 5 years next summer since I've been back, and it cannot happen soon enough.
Wherever you are, if I'm around, we'll share a coupe de champagne.
Oui, absolument. I would love that. Thank you. Thank you for joining me from across the pond today. I thoroughly enjoyed having you on the podcast.
Me too. I'm normally nervous at these things, but you're lovely to talk to. Thank you.
You're so sweet. And listeners, look for her new book. It comes out this week, My Good Life in France, and check out her blog, thegoodlifefrance.com. For the show notes of today's episode, visit the blog, thesimplyluxuriouslife.com/podcast 167. You'll find links to her book, to her website, to all the different things we've talked about, as well as the travel app that she recommends. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thank you for tuning in, and stay tuned. We have 2 more episodes this week alone for this year's French Week on the Simply Luxurious Life blog, including the Simple Sophisticate podcast. Thank you for tuning in to the Simple Sophisticate podcast, where intelligent living is paired with signature style. For more ideas and inspiration throughout the week, stop by the blog, thesimplyluxuriouslife.com, or pick up the book, now available on Audible, iTunes, and Amazon, as well as in paperback, Choosing the Simply Luxurious Life, A Modern Woman's Guide. To stay caught up on the most recent episodes of the podcast, blog posts, and to receive exclusive news as well as an extra dose of inspiration to start your weekend, subscribe to the Simply Luxurious Life's weekly newsletter, which arrives in your inbox each Friday morning to enjoy with a hot cup of tea or a hot cup of coffee. Thank you for listening. I'm your host, Shannon Ables. À la prochaine.